Hello, Anas. Welcome back to F.A.C.E. There you go. Your screen sharing, waiting to hear you. Oh, look at this, a PowerPoint by Anas Alhajji.
He's still muted.
Please unmute, Anas.
I did.
Anas, how are you, buddy? Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did you like my comparison that you've been calling the oil market like Nostradamus?
Well,
you know who he is,
I
right?
wish I was paid for it.
Anyway, you know, I mean, you're known for saying that OPEC manages the oil market. What great managers they are. And prices, you know, ascended to levels you talked about quite some time ago. So
absolutely. And I mean, the writings were on the wall. As you know, timing was always difficult. I believe that prices went up earlier than expectation. But in terms of trend, I think they were on the mark.
Okay. All right. So what do you have for us today? The IEA scenario?
Well, I thought about what to talk about today, and I thought to talk about some points that no one is talking about.
Right.
So I created 8 bullet points. I will talk about them briefly each. Okay. And I think people are going to like that.
Okay.
The first one about the IEA scenario that caused shockwaves, and the media covered it widely, that we don't need oil and gas by 2050 if we want to reach carbon neutrality with temperature not rising above 1.5 degrees. And the comment on that no one asked was, okay, we have all those countries that already announced the year that they are going to achieve carbon neutrality. We have companies that already announced that they are going to be carbon neutral by a certain year, like 2040, 2030, whatever. If all of them announce that and they know where they are going, then why the IEA is creating this scenario to help them out?
Okay.
That means everyone made the announcement without knowing how to get there, how to pay for it, and who is going to pay for it.
Yeah, so the just importance words. Big difference between making a statement and executing.
So the importance of the scenario is it proves that all those announcements basically were made without knowing how to get there. And the IEA itself said it created the scenario because it was asked by the governments how to achieve it because they did not know. So this is really a big thing here. I mean, regardless of the scenario and what Prince Abdulaziz bin Salman, the energy minister of Saudi Arabia, and he said this is from La La Land and all that stuff. Regardless of the details, the importance of it is it proves the point that those countries and companies have no clue when they made those announcements. And this is very significant for the oil market. Because if all of them are going to say that and they are not going to invest and demand is going to continue going up, then prices are going to continue going up.
Right. There's no investing on drilling anywhere here in the US.
That brings us to the second point on the investors' revolt on, as we all heard about ExxonMobil, Chevron, and Total. So what those investors want? Now, let's take the fact that Engine 1 was a proxy for way bigger companies. And the media went crazy on small investor. And no, it wasn't small investor. It was a proxy for some really big investors. So what they want? The irony is they want ExxonMobil and Chevron to invest in profitable oil.
Right.
Which means that probably good news for small companies, because we might end up with Exxon and Chevron divesting from shale. But we will see how that's going to play. But the most important, just like the EIA scenario and what the main point out of it, we have the same thing here. What is the main point out of the investors' revolt? Supposedly that they want a cleaner energy. They want those companies to invest in everything that take us to carbon neutral world, etc. Well, that proves a very important point. Environmentalists always cheered the funds and the investors who divested from oil and gas.
Right.
Well,
Until they drive to the gas station.
Well, but the main idea here is you cannot have it both ways. What happened at Chevron, ExxonMobil, and Total proves the idea that divestment was a mistake. If you want to make a change, you stay at the table. If you are not at the table, you have no voice. So those who stayed at the table had more impact than those who divested. And now oil and gas prices, mostly oil, is going to go up, and we probably will have really a good run. Those who divested are going to miss on that. But those who did not, who stayed, are going to make really good money.
I have a question from an attendee from Nirvan Mehershan, Mr. Alhajji, respectively. When do the IEA, EIA, OPEC demand scenarios expect OPEC plus spare capacity to be exhausted?
Okay. Based on those scenarios right now, it's not going to be exhausted because all of them think that demand is going to decline, and therefore we don't need that oil anyway.
Okay.
We, on the other side, who believe that demand is going to grow, who believe that this demand is going to be, the spare capacity is going to be exhausted, and prices are going to go through the roof.
Right.
So for them,
I know a lot of smart people that go with B right here. Anas. Really. I mean, people that weren't really constructive on oil months ago when it was out of favor. You're very welcome, Nirvan. And now they're jumping on it. You know, they're saying, you know, guys like Tom Lee on CNBC, who, you know, has made some very good forecasts. You know, he's saying, you know, that oil is a hodl almost, you know, which is a crypto term. But he's saying for at least 3 years, and that it's going to would have a major positive impact.
Well, the third point is going to focus on a point that no one else is focusing on, and this is very important. I tweeted about that yesterday. Okay. I think that's the third point. What people are missing is we have this massive drought in several areas around the world, especially in Brazil and Western United States, but we have all this chip shortage and all this stuff too because of that. But let's focus on this because people do not understand what it means to oil. If you look at a country like Brazil, they switched to flex fuel or ethanol since the 70s. And most of their cars run on flex fuel with a lot of ethanol. Okay. So we have a major drought, and drought affect the production of sugar cane, corn, and therefore ethanol production declines. And here we ended up with two problems. The first one is ethanol prices at a record high. And the second one is now ethanol has to compete with sugar. So whoever has the sweet tooth and is going to pay more for sugar, we are going to see divergence to sugar at the expense of ethanol. And
corn too. I mean, corn prices have almost tripled. On us in the last year.
So what's happened is,
go ahead.
We have people in Brazil right now calling on the government to relax the requirements for ethanol so they can use more gasoline. And Brazil does not have that extra gasoline. It has to import it. And that's not counted in any outlook.
Like they don't have enough problems.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No. So that gasoline is not counted in any outlook. That's more bullish now. But we have even more bullish news. Because of the drought, water levels in the dams in Brazil are very low. And therefore, the hydroelectric production is declining, which leads to power shortages. How to compensate for that? The only way you can compensate for it is to use either diesel or fuel oil. That does not exist, and Brazil has to import it. But if you look worldwide, when we have power shortages, we have something that analysts always missed, and that's private generation. People and companies and factories resort to private generation, and private generation mostly uses diesel. So all of a sudden, and mark my words for this, diesel consumption in Brazil is going to skyrocket. That's another bullish sign.
Okay. How about here in the U.S.? How about
Well,
more?
We need a whole show on this because
Okay. All right.
California cannot go on with all its policies while it's going to experience those shortages year after year after year.
Okay.
Last year, we've seen the federal government bringing some, I forgot whether it was the Navy or the military, large diesel generators to help California.
Huh. Okay. Well, I hope the utilities stay on this summer. It's pretty hot where I moved to.
And this is another issue. I think you are raising a very important issue. If we end up, and I tweeted about this yesterday too, if we are going to end up with a hot summer, here are the kind of the results of the main scenario. People always look at the Arabian Gulf states, because if we have a very hot summer, then they use a lot of fuel oil in their power generation, and their exports, but net exports decline. And that kind of another piece of the bullish news.
Okay.
The issue here is because of COVID and because of various reasons, this may not happen this year, but we are going to see a run on jet fuel. Jet fuel in the region is going to skyrocket if we have a hot summer.
Why? Because people are going to want to get out of hot areas and
Yes.
travel out of it?
Especially after COVID, because they've been already stranded for more than a year. If we are going to end up in a hot summer in Europe, as I mentioned in the tweet, God help the Europeans, because there is no other solution just to handle. I mean, I don't know really. They are going to have serious problems. The reason why you end up with hot weather, because the wind is not blowing. And if the wind is not blowing, then wind power is not going to help.
Yeah.
The other issue is if we end up with a hot weather in Texas and California, we are going to end up with blackouts.
Okay.
And
this
these
year.
are all serious. Yes, right now in this summer.
Okay. All right.
The fourth point is the U.S. Oil imports from Iran. This was all over the news for about a day or two on the Biden administration importing oil from Iran. People do not know that it was a website, a pro-Trump website with suspected links to the Russians that brought up the story. And when people were interested in it, all of a sudden, other major news agencies started getting the same exact story without investigating it.
Okay. Misinformation then, right?
Well, the Biden administration did not import oil from Iran. It was confiscated oil from an oil tanker in the Arabian Sea that the Trump administration confiscated, but the whole legal procedure did not finish until Biden took over.
Okay.
So it wasn't.
Right. You brought up Russia. I have to just sidetrack you a little bit.
Well, Russia, because the website being accused always of being related to Russia. The website that brought up the story.
Russia made an announcement of what kind of currency mix they're going to accept for payment of oil. Taking dollars, less dollars, more yuan, more euro. Any impact?
Well,
on the dollar?
It is the same story. I think we had this discussion a couple of shows ago.
It's been going on for years, trying to de-dollarize.
Correct.
Take the petro currency status away from the dollar.
Oil will remain priced in dollar no matter what. Okay. And we have to separate pricing from revenues.
There you go, Blake.
Okay. So we have to
Okay.
separate pricing from revenues. So what they are asking for is to get the revenues. And that will have an impact in terms of quantities, etc., traded in the market, but oil will remain priced in dollar.
Okay. Got it.
The other points quickly, I don't know how much time we have left here.
10 minutes.
Okay, that's good. On the return of Iranian oil, there is all kind of misunderstanding among analysts and the media about the return of Iranian oil if the sanctions are lifted. The question is, what is the impact on the market when? The other question is, okay, if they increase production, will Iran get an OPEC quota because they don't have it now? Well, and the big misunderstanding of this, everything Iran can export is already in the market. And that confiscated oil that the Trump administration confiscated and reached the United States and sold in March proves that point. That oil is already in the market. So if Biden lifts the sanctions tomorrow, we are not going to see a flood of oil from Iran. It takes months to see any meaningful increase from there. That's another bullish sign. But we have one problem. We have some floating storage, and the estimate is probably about 70 to 110 million barrels that could be released at any time if there is a market for it. Well, here we have a major problem because we have crude and we have condensates. Usually, OPEC define condensates as everything that is above 50 API. And most of that is condensates, is not crude. But the Iranians would love to kind of lump sum all of that to show a larger number of exports anyway. As for OPEC and the quota, OPEC is very clear on this, that they will assign quota to Libya and Venezuela and Iran, not Venezuela, probably later on for Venezuela, but Venezuela is in the mix anyway. If they go back to the 2016 production level. So once their production increases until it reaches 2016 level, then they will assign them quota. Then after that, will they obey for it, buy it or not? That's a different story. But again, that issue of condensates versus crude is going to mess up the numbers. In addition, all those numbers in the media are different numbers and they are not credible at all. Whatever number you read in the media, Iranian exports is larger. That's the rule of thumb in this case for me. I think point number 6 is going to be very exciting for a lot of people. And if you don't mind going to my Twitter feed, Anas Alhajji, because it is the pinned thread.
Pinned tweet?
Yes, it is a thread on the sweet spot for oil. And on the sweet spot, what is the sweet spot and what is hit and run? These are the two main points here. I always been fascinated by trying to find out what is the optimal price of oil from consumers and producers' point of view. Something that makes both sides happy. And I've been doing this work for a very long time. And I call that the sweet spot. The sweet spot right now, we are already in it. If you look at the forward curve for the next 10 to 12 months, we are already in it. It's about 68 to 75 for Brent. Okay. Anything above 75 is the sour spot. Anything below 68 is the bitter spot. Now, those numbers, rounded numbers just for talking points, but actually in the model, they are not rounded numbers, of course. But the issue here is with all the IEA pressure and the scenario and all the climate change policies coming out of Europe and the Biden administration, there is a real fear that while OPEC Plus is enjoying this and the consumers are enjoying this level because it leads to stability over long term, they are enjoying this, it might force a hit and run scenario. A hit and run scenario basically is, instead of OPEC Plus trying to keep prices below 75, that they are going to let prices run to whatever price they can get, whatever that price is, take all that money and run away. That's the hit and run scenario. So what I'm saying here is the Biden administration and the Europeans and the IEA probably are forcing this hit and run, which means that prices can skyrocket and destroy the world economy just because of their extreme actions on climate change.
Okay, and right, and also, doesn't that really serve the environmentalists and the green movement? 100+ oil, where everyone will want to make the conversion?
I am glad you made that point because they are missing a very important point. Now, a climate change expert cannot be an oil expert, and that's why they are missing the point.
Well, I'm not even talking about experts. If I'm used to paying $3-4 a gallon, and I'm paying 7 and 8. I'm going to more seriously look at an EV than a combustible.
But hold on just a second. There is a problem here. Let me explain it. We have enough evidence throughout the years to show that the oil business and every competitor, every energy source, they share the same basic materials. And we have enough evidence to show when oil prices go up, the demand for materials for the oil sector, especially steel for pipelines, for rigs, etc., and every copper and everything else, goes through the roof. And the oil industry is the only one that has the cash without any government support to buy these things. So the oil industry is going to dominate in buying these things, although they are expensive. But other sources, whether wind or solar or the EVs and everyone else, want the same material. So the cost goes up for everyone. It's not only for oil and then the others will stay low.
Right. Okay.
And we have enough evidence. For example, look at 2007, 2008. Oil prices went to above 120, and as you know, that they reached 147 for a short period. Yeah. We did not see a switch. Right. Why? Because the cost of everything went through the roof. And then we have the experience 2011 to 2014. We did not see a switch. The cost of everything went through the roof.
Did you know that there's an explosion at the oil refineries in Iran? That I believe, is this news? Is this breaking?
Yeah, yes, this happened yesterday.
Okay.
And there are two theories on that. The first theory is it's either the U.S. and Israel and others are causing those explosions in various ways. And the other one is no. Let's remember that the Iranian oil industry is one of the oldest in the world.
Okay.
It is definitely the oldest in the Middle East. The infrastructure is crumbling because of sanctions and because of corruption. And it's only natural to see these things happening on daily or weekly basis.
Those poor people.
Okay, and this point is important too, because if oil prices keep increasing, we are going to see similar problems in many countries, that including Venezuela, including Nigeria, including Libya, because the infrastructure is too old. And if you try to pump more and put more pressure, you are going to end up with those explosions and those fires.
Okay, we have a few. Bullish. Yeah. Okay, so we have a few minutes here, Anas. Okay. Why don't you try and wrap it?
So the final point that I would like to talk about is consumer reaction to high gasoline prices. We have evidence from 2007 when the national average reached $4, and that's back to your point about high gasoline prices. We've seen with $4 gasoline that the public ridership was at record high.
Yeah, they don't care right now after being in jail. Yeah.
Carpooling basically was at record high. And the question is, now after COVID, if gasoline prices go to $4, will we see the same trend? Or people are afraid and they will continue driving their own individual cars because of fear of COVID? Oh, and that's the question. And I'll end with that.
Okay. What a great presentation. All right. Also, people for a while, restaurants, hotels, airfares, gasoline will just because they're on parole and they've been freed for a while, won't be that price sensitive until they get their credit card bills in August and September. And then I think they'll pull in their horns. What do you think?
Well, that's a typical
Yeah.
consumer behavior. But
Yeah, but I mean, it's not typical because they haven't been able to do we haven't been able to do anything for years. So who cares what it costs? I just
yes,
need to get out of town. I
co-
just
co-
want to take a ride cross country. I'm still going to buy a steak, even though 20% of the meat capacity production is not there and it costs me more. For a while, people aren't going to care about prices because
correct.
of what they've experienced, but they
We have a
will.
problem. We have a problem here, Dale. The problem is we have serious supply chain problems throughout the
Yeah,
world and in the U.S.
yeah.
I ordered because of the freeze in Texas. I have several bushes and trees and plants that died. I needed a replacement. I placed a
Yeah.
large order. Everything arrived dead because they were late 7 days, and that's
Yeah.
U.S. mail.
Sitting, oh, okay. Not sitting on a ship. That's just the mail.
Okay,
Okay.
I mean on the
All right.
ships.
Well,
I know people who bought furniture and they've been waiting for months and they have not received it yet.
yeah. Well, welcome to the new normal, Anas, and thank you for giving us some ideas for what we could expect and maybe some potential ideas to make a few chips here and there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You're the best in the oil, bro.
Thank you, thank you. I really
And
appreciate it.
our audience really appreciates when you're here. So
I'm always honored to be on your show.
okay, thank you so much. Anas Alhajji, and you could find him on Twitter at that name. Anywhere else people could find you, Anas?
Well, Twitter is the best. I do have my own website with my own name, Anas Alhajji.
Okay,
Some of the old articles are there.
okay. My trading warrior brother, Anas Alhajji. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, and I'll see everyone tomorrow. And we'll wrap the week on the NFP Trade It Live with us. Shalom, Amira. Hope I got your questions in. Don't forget to join the team in 14 minutes for the morning edge. Get your bias chart and consider becoming part of our community. And that's a wrap. Remember, don't just count your pips, count your blessings. Adios, everyone. You're welcome, Tom. Shalom, Amira. You're welcome, Jorge.